Hi, welcome back to 23 Days of Astrology with Marjorie Cottrell. This is day 19, and today we are going to spend just a couple of minutes talking about paying attention to the transiting moon and what that can look like in our charts and how that can be fun to do. So you can find me and my work at marjoriecottrell.com, and I am going to just pull up a chart. I'm going to switch my share here for 1 second. I'm going to pull up a chart for us to look at, and we can demonstrate what we're talking about. All right. So this is a birth chart. Well, technically, it's the chart of right now. I was going to use a birth chart, but I think this just might be easier. So this is, sorry, I'm just moving this menu around. Okay. So we are looking at the chart of the moment-ish. We'll just pretend it's somebody's birth chart. This is in Luna astrology software, in case you're wondering. Okay. So I think that tracking the moon and like what the moon feels like and how we can kind of notice her subtle fluctuations as we move through our days and our weeks can be a really nice practice in like just learning to understand how themes can show up for us and how we experience them and how we can observe them at the same time. Okay, so pretend this is your birth chart and we're looking at the birth chart. Maybe this isn't a good example. Well, it's fine. We'll work with this. So pretend this is your birth chart and you have the moon in the seventh house of Scorpio. So if we throw up the transit by wheel, no, all right, scratch this. I'm going to go back to my original plan, which was Carl Jung's birth chart. Okay, let's work with this. Okay, so rewind a minute. Pretend this is your birth chart. So this is actually Carl Jung's birth chart. This is inside of my Luna software. It's available. There's like, if you look in the Luna software and you look in charts, there will be a list of all the saved charts that you've put in, and then a list of public, I think they call them public charts. And this was in there for the public charts. Okay. Back to our original programming. So this is your birth chart or Carl Jung's for an example. We're going to throw up a transit bi-wheel. So if you're new to any of this, basically what I just did is I had Carl Jung's or example chart on the inner wheel. And then when I clicked to throw up the transit bi-wheel, the transits for today popped up. So today's sky is kind of laid on the outer wheel around the birth chart, and we can see how the transiting planets move around and talk to or interact with the birth chart. So the point of this, for our purposes for today, we're thinking and feeling into the moon and lunar transits and how they may show up for somebody. So in our example chart here, we can see that the transiting moon or the moon that's moving through the sky is up here in the 10th house. So it's moving through the 10th house. We know the 10th house is the place that deals with career, reputation, the very visible piece of us in the world. It's also in the sign of Scorpio. So we can think about this. We're not thinking about natal signatures right now. We're thinking about transiting signatures. So how might the moon moving through someone's 10th house show up for them? And what might that feel like? So if the moon is transiting through the 10th house of career and reputation, this might feel like the right time to get to work, to make a work presentation. As Carl Jung's chart, we know that a lot of his work dealt with the unconscious and digging into the unconscious and revealing or shining a light on what is hidden in the depths of our mind. Maybe when the moon moved through Scorpio for him, maybe those were times of the month when he had really deep insights. And maybe he felt really emotionally connected to his work on the days that the moon had transited through this part of his chart. So, the point of this is to really think about and track, but not in a like get out a notebook and write it all down kind of way. You can do that. But I think it's a little more fun to just kind of like flow with it. I like to do it. I used to think about, okay, the moon's going to be in this sign on these days and this sign on these days. And I used to think about it from the front end. But now I find it a lot more interesting to think about it on the back end and to think about, ooh, I just experienced this. I wonder where the moon was. That really felt like the moon was in this part of my chart. And then I like to check. Sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. But here's an example that's not this birth chart. So I'll turn this off for this part of it. So my example is I was shopping recently. The moon was in, this was a couple days ago. The moon was in the sign of Leo, which is my 11th house. I'm going about my business. And then I had to run errands. So I leave and I'm like, oh, to my family, I'm like, I'm gonna be out shopping for like a really long time. Don't come find me. So I'm like, I'm gonna go to all the stores. So I leave and I go to Staples. So I'm in Staples and I needed to like make returns. And like an Amazon return was there. And while I was there, I just felt like so overwhelmed with curiosity about this project I'm working on. I've been working on a workbook book about retreat planning and using, thinking about how I'm going to map this out and how I'm going to print it. And so after I was done my like Staples business, I walked over to like the printing counter, which I love. I always want to like be there and ask them questions, see all their samples. Um, so I went over and I asked them about like printing a book. I want like something that's spiral bound and what are my options? And I just got into this conversation about this book I'm working on. And then I became like overwhelmed with this urge to just go home and like work on it in this very like concentrated way. There's a lot of design layout that I hadn't fully articulated and like it's like fused and I was like, I know what I want to do. And I just couldn't do anything. I had to go home and I had to work on it right that moment. So like I come home and my husband and my daughter are like, what do you, I thought you were going to like all these stores. I thought you just went to Staples. I went up to my office and I like twiggled away on this for a couple of hours. I was in this like vortex of creativity and just like wanted to be by myself in my office working on it. And then later I was like, oh, the moon. I wonder if the moon shifted into Virgo, my 12th house, Virgo, like meticulous work while I was at that Staples counter talking about this. And it did. And I looked it up and I'm like, oh, that's so interesting and fun to think about. So the point is that we can, if we pay attention and we get quiet, we can notice these like subtle shifts. And this is not to say that the moon moving into Virgo caused me. I don't subscribe to the causal connection in astrology, but there was something symbolic about what happened above and how that showed up for me and how I experienced it in my life, which led to hours of very meticulous toiling on the computer in seclusion in the 12th house. My office is on the third floor, and I just like to come up here and do my work. Um, so it's just another example of when the moon moves through our chart, and it can be fun to work with because the moon moves so fast, so we can really notice these fluctuations and feel them. Another thing when I know when the moon moves through Virgo, I like to pay my bills. I like to, because I don't feel as stressed about it in that time for some reason. Like I'm like, this is what I have to do, and I'm going to do it. So when it lines up, I like to do those things. Um, and yeah, so I could go on and on about through each house and what things could show up for. So I would like, if you would like a homework assignment or you would like to work on this a little bit, try to pay attention to, fluctuations or shifts and then get curious about like making some guesses. Like what do you think was going on with the moon and how that was interacting with your chart or even just general, like what category, what house was it moving through? What house did it jump into? And did you feel like an uptick in urgency or just an affinity towards the topics of that house, or did they just kind of like spontaneously become prominent, maybe through an annoying way or through a way that you felt compelled to act on? These are ways that we can work with the symbolism and really engage more intimately with the symbolism. And I think that it makes you a better astrologer. It makes you like a stronger interpreter, and it just deepens the relationship with the symbols that we are always cultivating. Okay, so I think I feel like I had one more thing I wanted to say on that, but I can't remember. I think I got a little distracted with the switching of the charts. Um, but yeah, so I think that's a fun activity to work on. If you have had similar experiences, I would love to hear about them. And thank you so much for being here. I can be reached at marjoriecottrell.com. You can sign up for my newsletter. I don't send a lot of emails, but I do book giveaways sometimes. My services include different kinds of readings, astrology tutoring, workshops and retreats. The Lunar Collective, my third annual retreat, is coming up in a few weeks, and I have a few tickets left. And you can always download my online workshop, Astrology Workshop for Creatives, online and watch it later today. And then I will leave you with our topic for the next video, which is going to be about embracing the mystery. And we'll get into that next time. So, as always, thank you so much for being here, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.